Quarterly, Lamentations, Song of Songs, Ecclesiastes. Lesson 6, Song of Songs 4:8 to 5:1, From the Wilderness to the Garden. This three-stanza poem, at the very heart of the song, extols the intimate, God-designed connection between marriage and sex. The celebration of the delights of married love in the song 4:16 to 5:1 forms the exact center of the song, with 111 lines before it, excluding the superscription, and 111 lines after it. This structure, connecting sex indissolubly with marriage, makes it a very countercultural poem in our culture, where many people treat sexual desire just like any biological appetite. However, its emphasis on marriage as a garden of sexual delight was equally countercultural in its ancient context, which often regarded marriage merely as a means to political and financial security, or as a method of controlling lust and acquiring children. Biblical wisdom is countercultural in every time and place. In the previous section, Song 3:6 through to 4:7, a sharp contrast was drawn between Solomon's glorious but entirely self-centered wedding day, in chapter 3 verses 6 to 11, and the man in the song's undivided focus on the beauty of his bride-to-be, 4:1 to 7. Now the man invites his bride to leave the inaccessible wilderness and unlock her garden for him, so that he can enjoy its sights, smells, tastes, and touch, chapter 4 verse 8 to 15. Unlike chapter 2, where the woman declined his invitation because the time was not yet right, she now welcomes her husband to enjoy the delightful fruits of his garden, verse 16. The man accepts the offer, and their mutual enjoyment is praised by an unidentified voice in chapter 5 verse 1. In this way, we see a picture of the goodness of godly sexual desire within marriage. At the beginning of the poem, the woman is pictured in a dangerous and remote wilderness, the mountain ranges of Lebanon, the lair of dangerous wild animals, and the home of exotic spices, chapter 4 verse 8. The man invites her to join him on a journey from that dangerous wilderness to the safe delight of a lush garden, an invitation that she joyfully accepts. In understanding her acceptance here, when she turned him down in chapter 2, it's crucially significant that he calls her bride for the first time. The word occurs 6 times in this poem, chapter 4 verses 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and chapter 5 verse 1, and nowhere else in the song, emphatically connecting the sexual experience described here with the legal status that goes with it. Marriage creates the legal and relational context in which it is right and appropriate for the locked garden and the sealed fountain of our sexuality to be unlocked. The couple's bond is deeply relational as well as legal, so she is called his sister, not merely his bride. She's not literally his sister, of course. However, the friendship in their marriage is like that of a brother and a sister, the closest bond possible with a person of the opposite gender in antiquity. Legal and sexual union were never intended to exist by themselves. Rather, as Genesis 2:24 declared, marriage is a union of body and soul, in which two people are united in every aspect of their lives. From then on, they are no longer two separate individuals, but rather one new body, in which mutual care, companionship, respect, and self-giving are the natural consequence. See Ephesians 5, verses 28 to 30. Yet while the marriage relationship is more than sexual, it's certainly not less than sexual. The man passionately craves the woman. Since in Hebrew the heart is the seat of the thinking, not just feeling, the phrase "you have captivated my heart" in verse 9 means, I can't think straight. You drive me out of my mind. This is the mirror image of the woman's earlier declaration that she is sick with love in chapter 2 verse 5. The man's attention is drawn to her eyes and her jeweled necklace in verse 9. The metaphorical weapons with which her neck is surrounded have captured him completely and made him a prisoner of love. In the beginning of the song, the woman sought the fulfillment of a kiss. Now, in an expression of the mutuality of true love, the man feels what she felt. Now it is her caresses that are better than wine, in chapter 4, verse 10. Having waited faithfully, the couple's love is now in full flower, ready to be consummated. Fragrance and taste go back and forth as the dominant senses. The fragrance of lemon, a common symbol in the Old Testament for a land blossoming with prosperity, combines with the presence of honey and milk under the woman's tongue to invoke a comparison between her and the promised land. Like the promised land, her body becomes a symbol of complete prosperity, fruitfulness, and rest. The phrase, "your lips drip nectar," in verse 11, exactly parallels Proverbs 5:3, where, however, it describes the kiss of the adulterous woman. True delight and satisfaction are actually to be found in the arms of the bride, not in the sinful embrace of an amorous stranger. This time, the couple will not stop merely with kisses. As their relationship reaches its climax, the man describes the woman as she has been up to this point: a locked garden and a sealed fountain, verse 12. In those days, kings and wealthy people created gardens as private places of leisure and intimacy with privileged friends. Such places were not open to be viewed or trampled by the general public. Likewise, in an arid climate, fountains were used to provide the water that was necessary for the garden to produce its lush growth. Such precious water could not be freely distributed to all without depriving the garden of its resources, and so it was sealed. The images of a fountain and flowing water are used to describe both male and female sexuality in Proverbs 5:15-19. There is no double standard in the Bible. Both men and women alike are to restrain their sexual desire until and within marriage. This is not because God is harsh and restrictive or has imposed laws that are designed to prevent human flourishing. Quite the contrary. Such restraint is the precise means whereby the delightful fruitfulness, unique intimacy, and glorious rest that a sexual relationship was designed to bring can be fulfilled. The image of the sexual relationship as a locked garden containing innumerable delights inevitably reminds us of the original walled garden in Eden, where the Lord met daily with Adam and Eve. Like the original garden, the woman's body is literally a paradise, verse 13, filled with every good fruit and aromatic spice. Every spice mentioned elsewhere in the song is present in this garden. Its products come from many different lands and include common plants like henna alongside exotic species like spikenard and saffron. No ordinary garden could possibly have sustained all those different plants, which further heightens the associations with the Garden of Eden. As the poem progresses, the focus of the images of a garden and a fountain shifts from representing the woman's virginal purity to her identity as the source of abundant and rich life. She is a luxuriant garden and a well that is flowing with cool streams of living water. What is being celebrated here is not perpetual virginity, but sexual purity that supports a fruitful and delightful union in marriage. The woman joyfully responds to the man's words by inviting him to come to his garden and enjoy its choice fruits. Verse 16. The garden that had been locked and the fountain that once was sealed are now freely opened for him to enjoy. When the woman summons north and south winds to awake her garden, she uses the same verb that she used earlier when she warned the daughters of Jerusalem against awaking love too soon in 2:17, 3:5, and 8:4. The winds turn the once slumbering and locked garden into an opened and awakened paradise that wafts abroad its fragrance when the long-awaited day of union finally arrives. The man is equally eager to accept her invitation. Now she is no longer simply a garden, she is my garden. Chapter 5, verse 1. There are no fewer than 8 first-person singular possessives, I, me, my, in verse 1, in the course of a mere 16 Hebrew words, emphasizing the exclusiveness of their marital relationship. The myrrh and spices, the honeycomb and honey, the wine and milk that he described in the preceding verses belong to him, and him alone to enjoy. At the moment of consummation, he describes her once again as my sister and bride, expressing delightful relational and legal intimacy that provides the safe context for the sexual intimacy they will now share. At this climactic moment of the poem, an unidentified speaker adds their own words of approval. Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. Chapter 5, verse 2. Whether the speaker is the daughters of Jerusalem or the wider community, or God himself giving his sanction on the couple's union, is ultimately unimportant. Whoever is speaking reflects the author's evaluation of the consummation of their marriage, declaring it to be very good. See Genesis 1:31. Application questions. 1. How did the fall affect our sexuality? 2. How does the approach of this poem differ from how the Church often argues in favor of chastity? 3. What three components of marriage are highlighted in this passage, and why are all three of these vital to a godly marriage? 4. How do these three aspects of marriage illuminate our relationship with Christ?